Good evening, campers, dreamers, and babysitters. Following 4 teens who find out that a test screening is coming to their little cinema. But the film is actually a mind control experiment that has terrifying effects. Yes, folks, this is our raw reaction review for Test Screening. Once again, let's start this review off by thanking the good folks just across the pond here for setting us up. Yes, of course, we are talking about Fright Fest over there in London. Still going on, still lots of great films premiering, and Test Screening happens to be another one of those films. And we got a chance to see it thanks to the folks behind this one. They were very kind and sent us a screener for test screening. So we got to check this flick out, and I'm going to be completely upfront. As usual, with any of these festivals, there's always a handful. I didn't know anything about this movie. Didn't read a description, nothing. This purely was obtained and went off of, at least in my book, I kind of just forced this onto Luke, as I do with many of our screeners. This was just something because our buddy Alex over at Beyond the Void said, guys, you have to see this. It is awesome. So, Luke, we've gotten a chance to see it. How are you feeling? What are your initial thoughts on Test Screening?
You know, I didn't go in as cold as you. I, at least, prior to viewing this one, I did look it up on IMDb, just because I didn't know really anything about it, other than I was probably about a test screening. But, you know, so I read the little synopsis, and I saw the wonderful poster that is on IMDb, and I gotta say, I was excited diving into this one, you know, but they're always hit or miss sometimes. So, you know, going into this one, I was hooked right off the bat. The world building in this film is just something that I die for. This is something that checks all my boxes in terms of capturing the feel of it. This is 1982 Oregon. You know, for me, we've got a couple projects, and I have a fascination for around this time period in Oregon in general. So as soon as this one popped up, I was absolutely excited just from the very beginning here. The world building's great, the characters are great. I was hooked.
I got major summer of '84 vibes just from the way this film was shot, presented, a lot of the ways that the characters were brought on screen. Definitely not a one-to-one comparison by any means, especially when it gets into our characters. But you can just tell that they did that same thing that like Summer of '84 does, where it captures a very like unique approach to like telling an 80s horror film in the modern day, you know, like setting it in that time period, you know. And I only say that because obviously we talk about it all the time. Stranger Things is like a huge thing, and everybody says that it oversaturated that feeling. This is different. This is a little bit more of the kind of 80s feel that I like. So right when we got into it, you're right, like we're in Oregon, 1982. I just was like, I'm loving this. So far, this feels exactly like one of those kind of films. And whenever you can kind of capture those tones and have that essence right off the bat, it's pretty much an easy sell. You have to do quite a bit with the concept story-wise to really throw me off at that point.
You know, and looking at the film, when we're opening up and this is world building, you know, you mentioned Summer of '84 and kind of how Stranger Things kind of oversaturated a little bit with that hyper 80s feel. You know, this one gave me strong in terms of that world building, the actual city, the town that it's in, gave me Gremlins vibes. And, you know, it's like, you know, Gremlins, they weren't trying to recapture the 80s. They were living through the 80s. So this one gets some bonus points for not feeling inauthentic in a sense. This really does feel like a natural fit. It feels like this was filmed in 1982, to be honest, just because they're not going for those, you know, cheap pops in a sense of getting the crowd excited for, you know, we're mentioning this. Now, you know, there are some mentions to some very popular films out there, I think. But, you know, when you look at that in those comparisons, it's such a smart play because you can draw some parallels to what is happening in the film itself. So, you know, going into this one, they mix science fiction, they mix horror. It's all perfectly done here. And you know, I'm a huge sell for some sort of secret society in a sense, and it's got those vibes going for it as well. So you know, I think overall this film, this is something that I would, if you just manufacture something out of my brain to put into an hour and a half, that's test screening.
Yeah, no, I mean, for us personally, like Luke has been hinting towards, this was a kind of a very deep hit for us because, like, this is very much, you know, there's little concepts, little shards, little pieces throughout this film of projects that we've actually written and have things in the works to hopefully be able to make ourselves one day. This feels like this is a film that could take place if you were to put our movies in a universe with it. It would be in the universe of test screening. And I loved all of that. I mean, it maybe gives it a slight bias for us, but I think going even beyond that, this movie also just hits on a lot of things that notoriously we've praised on this channel. There are cosmic horror elements. There's some Lovecraftian elements in this film. It's kind of a hodgepodge of sorts that's just kind of like many different concepts that aren't necessarily trying to give itself away. It's not trying to be too on the nose with what exactly is going on. There you do find out a good bit, but it is one of those things where it's not just trying to play with one element and stay in there. It's a sandbox of different elements that we love when it comes to things like that. You get hints of films like Society. You get movies like Color Out of Space is another one that was big. I know I just pulled both of those from Alex's review, but they're spot on because that's exactly what I was feeling when things start to arise and happen.
You know, and what this presents for me here, and, you know, almost preparing of what the story is going to be, I was like, okay, I can pretty much figure out what the story is going to be about. But they add in that kind of other subgenre, and I was like, how is this even going to work? What are they going to do here? And I got to say, they've married them perfectly. It just feels like such a natural fit. It was something where I was like, that is such an intriguing hook in terms of a progression of what we start with and then what we end up getting. And I just love that sort of storytelling where it's just that natural fit. Doesn't feel forced. Doesn't feel like they took two disjointed elements and tried to just smash them together. This is just seamless. Again, the storytelling's great. The cast, I love the layers that this cast has, especially being for 1982 and some of the social issues that we're going through and just the personal issues that some of our characters are going through. The relationships feel so authentic here. It feels like you are actually, you know, you're sitting in that fifth seat and you're just having a piece of pizza and you're just enjoying the company as they're all speaking on screen. So, you know, the writing here is on point for me. It doesn't feel, again, it doesn't feel reference heavy in terms of, you know, a wink and a nod and really just playing for the cheap hits. This really does feel authentic. In you know, the things that they're dealing with here, the emotional beats that we have, you know, just pushing aside the science fiction and horror element here, just from a societal perspective, does really hit home for a lot of people, I think, is really touching on those issues. So you can really see that there is, you know, this willingness to tell an actual story, not just kind of throw anything at the screen and then just say, hey, we're going to throw in a big old mixing pot here and just we're going to sprinkle on the horror and science fiction and here we go for the audience. This is really asking a lot from the viewer, from an emotional standpoint, to really get behind a lot of things, and I absolutely love it.
Yeah, I agree. I really found myself falling in love with a lot of these characters, especially the character of Reels, played by, of course, Drew Scheid, I believe is how you pronounce it. Scheid, yeah. But most of you will remember him, most horror fans, from Halloween, and I'm talking about David Gordon Green's, of course. He was Oscar, probably as one of the best deaths of that trilogy. I couldn't pin him for a minute there.
Really?
I knew I had seen him. I knew I had seen him, but I just didn't know. But God damn, did they give him some chops. He gets a lot of screen time and a lot of really interesting, and honestly, where they leave his character was oddly very satisfying and very just like, oh, that's so cool of how they wrapped that in, because something happens in the film and you're kind of wondering, well, why is he, acting like this when everybody else is acting a different way. You know what I mean? Like, you're always trying to figure that out. And the way they handled that, I thought was very cool.
And I didn't realize he was in it again because I just read the synopsis and saw the poster, so I didn't go through the cast list to see who was in this. But as soon as he popped up on screen, I got to be honest, the film was fighting from underneath a little bit because I was like, I'm not a fan of the David Gordon Green trilogy too much at all. So I was like, I don't know how this performance is going to play, but I got to say, his performance, the writing in here, it all just hit. Like, I'm excited to see what he does next because his performance is comedic to an extent, but it's also authentic again. So, it really just feels like such a natural fit. And I think it has to do with the subject matter. It has to do with the quality of the film that really amped up his performance. And, he becomes off as a very likable character in here. And like you're saying, he's got an extra like little hook to him. All these characters have a different journey of something that they're dealing with, and they're all kind of just thrown into this one big element here, which I absolutely love. So, this one, it was, from a story perspective, I thought it was so well done. I think maybe if, fans are going into this that don't know too much about the film and just kind of want to see this big science fiction element, it might move for them slightly slow just because we are dealing with these personal issues from these characters. For me, I didn't have an issue with it because the more personal issues, the more in-depth, more intimate we get with our characters, I think once we add in that horror and science fiction element, it's going to mean so much more. And for me, it does, but I can see there's a point in here where something happens and we're kind of being introduced to that second element in the movie theater. And at that point, I was like, oh, okay, we're going to go full force in terms of our horror and science fiction element of that. But it does kind of pull back a bit, and we do a little more deeper storytelling with everybody. So I can see maybe people pushing back on that just a little bit, saying we want to get to those elements of science fiction. We want to get to those elements of horror. But overall, I think this film is so well done in terms of that pacing, because for me, it did not move slow at all.
No, and I agree. I think that people could find this a bit slow, especially in the middle section there after something happens, and then we kind of are like, oh, well, because it was definitely unexpected for me. I figured we'd get to, I guess the title of the film is all I'll say, and then you're thinking, okay, so everything's going to go off the rails now, but it doesn't. It then builds again, and it's interesting. Yeah, we linger, and it is great. I do think that it's very smart. I was hooked into it because, like you said, I was very invested in the characters. Again, I do want to make sure that I give everybody their praise here for this one, because I also thought that Chloe Kerwin, I thought, was excellent in this as well. She plays Penny. She was one of my favorite bits to this because she has probably the hardest character to play on screen with this, just because she's dealing with a lot of elements. She becomes our central protagonist in a sense as the film continues on. And the way that they kind of exclude her from the group, I thought worked perfectly for the kind of story they're trying to tell. And then the way that she was kind of roped into it. And honestly, I thought that the ending, and I won't spoil anything, but like the ending was just perfect. And I loved where her story went. I thought that was so gross and twisted and fun and awesome, and it just put a smile on my face. With that being said, I also want to give some praise to somebody that I actually gave some praise earlier this year for a film that we differed on, Blackout. Alex Hurt. I don't know what it is about this guy, man. I like him. I thought that his character in this, although he seemed a bit subdued, I appreciated the relationship that he had with his son, who was also another alum for us, with Johnny Berchtold, who you remember from The Passenger. Great to see him in this, but I love their dynamic because, oftentimes you see a situation like this. It's something that's very common, especially when you're looking at films set in this era, or when you're looking at like Stephen King books and stuff where they have something going on in their family that, you've seen a million times. I always expect there to be some level of resentment or abuse or something between the father and the son, but it's one of those things where they played it very realistically to me. You could tell that, they loved each other and they were going through something, and I appreciate that because I always feel like it's the low-hanging fruit to have a dynamic like that where they just hate each other. And it's like, no, they genuinely played it like real people, and I thought that was a very, very smart way to take it.
Yeah, it goes back to just being authentic. I think if I could describe this word or this film in one word, it would be authentic, because it just feels these performances here, they feel so natural, and I think that amplifies what we do get. Special effects on here for me absolutely work, where it's,
Dude, before I forget, the bathroom or the bathtub scene. Holy cap. One of the best effects scenes I've seen all year. Straight up. Had me like, oh my God, in my seat.
And this is one we can't really go into it, but
No.
it gave me chills in terms of just what I was looking at, and what it's again, I can't go into it, but like I want to describe it, but I think it would give too much away. And it was just eerie, disgusting almost. And I love those elements when we get into the special effects. Again, it's authentic. It feels like we're watching a film straight from the 80s for me. So, this one just absolutely worked for me. It hit every point imaginable. It ends in a very twisted manner, like Dylan said. And, I love how that ends, and just that it ends with like an exclamation point almost. I don't know how to describe it, but, this one hit on every level imaginable for me. This is something I don't think we have a release date on this one.
No release date right now.
So I don't know if we're going to be talking about this in terms of a 2024 release or not. I hope it comes out. I can't wait for an audience to see this. All I know is, for me, test screening is a must-see.
I'm going to follow that up with a must-see as well. I love this. I genuinely really, really enjoyed this movie. It's one that I cannot wait to sink my teeth into again. I think that the team that we have behind the camera here, with Clark Baker directing this and co-writing it with Steven Susko, I mean, they just absolutely crushed this concept, this material. We give this all the high praise, because again, it's one thing to make an 80s body horror, kind of, again, Lovecraftian-esque film and just go very Stranger Things. I'm not saying the Stranger Things is Lovecraftian. I'm just saying, they could have went very hyper 80s, like you were saying. Everything's over the top. Everything is in your face. But the fact that they were able to pull back and just give you the flavor, and then let the characters and the world and the town take you on this journey, and then also put in some fucking amazing practical effects and, again, body horror, it's an easy sell for me. This is definitely, this again feels like a movie that was written for Luke and I. I absolutely say you must see test screening as soon as it's available.
Absolutely. This is something I am going to rewatch endlessly when this is out. I am eager to own this on Blu-ray, and I will beg the creators, if you see this, please, 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 please find some way to give us a VHS release of this, because I would love to watch this with that VHS grain. Just transport me to the 80s officially with this. So I would love some sort of VHS release if possible on this one as well.
Easy. Hit up Broke Horror Fan. The folks over there at Screambox who put the Terrifier 2 one together. Hit him up. He will make it happen. I think it's Wetter or
Witter Entertainment.
Witter Entertainment. That's what it is. Witter Entertainment. Hit them up. Make it happen. Please, God. Because, like, yes, Luke is absolutely right. This is just one of those movies that would absolutely rock on a VHS print. I would totally buy it in a heartbeat. And yeah, I think this is seriously one of probably my favorite films of the year. And it sucks that, again, we don't have a release date, so we can't put this on our end of the year list, but we will keep you guys informed. We will keep you guys posted, because yeah, this was a total surprise. I absolutely love it. So thank you to, of course, Alex King. I know you're watching this, bud. Without you giving it such high praise and pushing us, I don't know if we would have requested the screener, and I deeply appreciate it because we loved it. So he knows us well. So alrighty, well, that is going to wrap us up here for our review. If you guys are interested in following up on this, just keep your ear to the ground. Follow Steven Susko on Twitter, Instagram, and just keep test screening in the brain. And hopefully we won't have to wait too long. Other than that, we got a lot of great stuff up on the channel. Lots of new reviews and other things up there for you. New lists on the horizon. And yeah, it's going to wrap it up here. So until next time, I'm Dylan Newell.
And I'm Luke Janesco.
And remember, stay scared.
Do the horror shit, gonna do it live. Cause Splattercast kick it every day they live. Splattercast, gonna smash your ass. 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 Splattercast, gonna smash your ass.